Hello Konstantinos, this is the first instalment of making the bread from the sourdough starter, and this isn't the starter. Here we have my starter bottle. You notice there's, or you may not, there's some clear liquid at the top there because it's not been disturbed, and it smells quite sour, so we're all right with that. I'm going to put it into this mixer, which is my Christmas present. There we go. And I'm just making a big batch of starter, really. There's nothing more than flour and a little water going in there. And then I'll split it up and some will go back in the jar. I'm just putting approximately 2 cups of flour in there. And this should make enough starter to keep some for the bread mix and to put some back in the jar. I'm using the mixer, as I said, my Christmas present, because it's easy. Getting as much air as possible into the mix to feed the yeast. But I've used a hand mixer or a fork. And that's going quite nicely. It's quite thick, so a bit of water. It up a bit, and if you could press the button again, Maureen, we'll not. So now you could look in the bowl, and I'm in it quite fast. Consistency should be about the same as a fairly thick mud. So I'll just keep on adding water. And so, oh, that's lovely and thick and sloppy. And then really get some air into it to feed the yeast. And then when it's settled, I'm going to just leave it in this container with some cling film over the top overnight. And then I'll pour some into the jar to keep the next time, and you'll catch up with it when I do that. Konstantinos, here we are again, and today, which is a day later than last time, I'm going to add another 2 cups of flour, or near enough, because I'm a bit short on flour. So if you have a look inside, you'll see that it's very lively after yesterday. And now I'll go and get my cup. So here we go. I have to go to Aldi or Lidl or somewhere tomorrow to get some more flour. So 1 cup. Two cups. Notice how exact this process is. And a bit of warm water from the tap. And we go through the same process as yesterday, and we'll make it much more. And then tomorrow, half of this will go in the jar, and the other half will go to making a loaf of bread. lovely, isn't it? Can you see inside there, Maureen? It's getting to be nice and mud-like. Speed it up a bit. This is my Christmas present. I don't know if I told you that, but very good it is too. Although I've got fewer muscles in my right arm than I used to have. That'll do, I think. Beautiful. Thank you, Maureen.
Yeah.
Hello, Konstantinos, Sasha Star. Have you switched me on?
Yeah.
Cool, good. This is the next stage in the development of the bread, and if you look in here, it's highly effervescent. So what I'm doing now is just decanting some of this, which is quite tricky, into my jar to set going for the next batch. You got this? You can go right over the top of it, have a look. And in there you can see all the bubbles bubbling up.
Yeah, can't get it.
No, bring it over here a bit. All the bubbles bubbling up. Lovely. And then clean up after myself. This lot I'll keep that going just with a spoonful of flour. Splash of water to keep the muddy consistency. Lovely. Doesn't matter if you don't mix it in too well, because the yeast are going to keep on feeding off that flour, and I'm going to put it in the fridge to slow it all down because I don't need it for a little while. Then, now what I used to do until very recently was to knead it with my hands. But this, as you know, was my Christmas present, so I've got a dough hook to do the kneading. My poor old arthritic hands are released from their duties. I can stop it. So, right, good. Already put one batch of flour in, another one in. It's quite a big loaf, this. And, it's a lot of, not guesswork, but as you go along you check the consistency of it. So if you have a look in there, and put some sugar. I'm using some very fine icing sugar, since it's quite a big loaf, quite a lot of it. So you do this with your hands, and then 3 months later, so So I'm just adding some water in because that was a bit thick. So we've got sugar in there, we've got a little bit more water to slacken it off, and I'm putting some olive oil in. You could really use your favourite bread recipe, but you notice I haven't put the salt in yet. The salt slows down the yeast, stops it rising so much. Now, or if you'd like to turn that off, we'll just let that. And it's nicely mixed up, and it's much wetter than a lot of bread doughs. That's a characteristic of sourdough. And now I'm going to put the salt in. So here we go. I like to use a dish. This is a casserole made out of, what's this, terracotta, with a lid to make an Eastern European bread with sourdough. And put a bit of oil in there, stop it sticking, and just grease around the outside and the lid.
You're greasing the lid.
Well, the edge here, where the lid sits on it, makes a nice seal. And then, give me a moment, don't follow me. Oh, you haven't. There we go, just wipe my hand and put seeds, and in this case I'm using some porridge oats on the outside, quite liberally. Little treat for the dog when she finds some on the floor later. There we go. And then this side, Maureen. Very good at this. You should take up cinematography. That's the word for it. There it is. Now the salt, a spoonful of salt I put in there. I kneaded it again with the salt. And the salt was in last because it does slow down the yeast, and I didn't want it to slow down yet. See how wet it is? I can't resist kneading it. A liberal coating of flour on the top here. And that's the kind of consistency you want. And it's not going to work like most breads. The wetter the better, I was told. But this is nice. Very nice. Don't have to work it much because it's been whipped up and beaten and flogged to death. And that is going in a warm place, probably overnight, but sometimes it can take 24 hours. So we'll have a look at it in the morning and then again in the evening, see how high up it goes. I'll put the lid on, put it in a warm place. Thank you. Right, so here we are, overnight. Have a look inside and you'll see that it is magnificent. It has grown monstrously, and it's as well not to touch anything on the top of that. My word, it has grown monstrously, in case it sinks. So now we've got the oven on 205, and it's going to go with the lid on in the oven so that it cooks in its own steam for 35 minutes. And then we take the top off. Turn the temperature down to 185 for another 35 minutes. There you go. And here we are, 35 minutes later or so. And all we're doing is taking the hat off. You'll see how beautiful that is. Cooked in its own steam. And now we just put it in for another 35 minutes at 185 to brown it off.
Is that it?
Thank you very much. Right, here we are, 35 minutes later. Oh, here she is. Now that is just like it's supposed to be. To make sure it's loose, should be, and then that's the finished product. Thank you very much. Right, there we are. Loaf. Still a little warm. And let's have a look. Nice crust on it. And there it is inside, nice and holy. And we needed some bread at lunchtime. We've got some now. Loads of butter, probably too much butter on that piece. And you can smell the sourness of the sourdough, the yeast. And
You finished?
Mm-hmm.